Hello and welcome to our 9 a.m. English News Edition. Here are the headlines. The President of the Republic sponsored the closing ceremony of the first edition of the National Disability Week. Russia suspended the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. Hello and welcome again. The National Agency for Disabled Persons celebrates this morning its first year of existence in its first edition of the National Week of Disabled Persons under the aegis of the President of the Republic, Ismail Omar Guelleh. This day took place in the presence of members of governments, international organizations, all people living with disabilities listed by the ANPH. The ANPH, which is an agency run by a Djiboutian living with a disability. In this case, Mr. Doualis Eid Mahmoud consists in working for the professional and socio-economic integration of our compatriots suffering from his disability. There is this range of the population which most often does not complain or claim, showing us at the same time an uncommon sense of dignity. Beyond the example they set for us by the courage, they show it was also a question of guaranteeing them the fundamental rights that every Djiboutian enjoys. It is with this in mind that under the impetus of the head of state, His Excellency Ismail Omar Guelleh, and strongly supported by the First Lady of the country and President of the UNFD, Mrs. Khadra Mahmoud Haid, the ANPH was created. To this day, the ANPH drew its strength from the decision taken by the head of state to improve and support the living condition of our fellow citizens with special needs. All these efforts have solicited the great contribution of many institutions, including the UNFD, which the First Lady Khadra Mahmoud Haid has the honor to lead. This day, rich in color and emotion, began with songs and dance performed by young deaf, hard of hearing and people with reduced mobility. Then the head of state followed with great interest the sketch performed by people living with a disability that highlighted their daily lives and support provided by the ANPH to support these people in need.
مسلم يا اخوان قدم لي حياتك وادعم المعاد
ورورا الحسيني ورا
خير ولا فضيحه
ساتاي
الحمد لله
بريان مبارك
والله بقاله ما سكتت
بالحافظه دي عيالها ينور
ادو في عيني والله
ورحمه كو شاغيا
هاي
نيكي احمد لا لا نادركاها حالتي سوي ما انت موجد
وربك ما ايوه
ودادوك وتهور داي
علمك الله هدبر
دادوك وتهور داي بعينك الوغايه
علمك الله هدبر
مرحبا والله
Speaking for this occasion, Barbara Manzi, the UN coordinator, praised the Djibouti government's effort to promote the rights of persons with disabilities in Djibouti.
Des Nations Unies, de vous faire part de notre haute appréciation des efforts importants déployés par la République de Djibouti pour faire progresser des personnes handicapées, notamment l'adoption.
The President of the Republic, National Human Rights Committee, Mr. Suleiman Omar Aden, has, for his part, did not miss the highly value the President of the Republic along with the persons with special needs, enabling them to become involved in the society.
Internationaux relatifs dont les 3 conventions protégeant les droits des populations dites.
As for the Director General of the National Agency for People with Disabilities pointed to the achievement of 1 year to develop service for the disabled, many did not believe that in a single year the recently created ANPH will accomplish such a task. Oh, how colossal it is done. And the only person who believed in us was His Excellency the President. And this is an honor for people with space needs as well as our National Agency for People with Disabilities, said the Director General. That we were going to create jobs for us to incite us definitively and without stigma in Djibouti society was not an option for many of us, except by the head of state who gave us his confidence and supported us enormously. Today, many of the senior executives around you recognize that your dream has become a reality. It must be said that the first man of the country, the first leader of a nation, has a broader vision in relation to the government. This is what makes the seed of a leader of a man. It should be noted that my compatriots today recognize, Mr. President, that your vision was right in more than one way. I am convinced that today father and mother have a peaceful heart, and even mentally retarded people feel deeply that it is not a day like another, has indicated Director General Mr. Douali. The President of the Republic, Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, praised the Djiboutian society for recognizing persons with disabilities and keeping pace with the programs and activities of the agency concerned with their integration into society. This National Week, which has just been organized at the initiative of the National Agency for Disabled Persons, is confronting in several ways. Indeed, it is confronting to see that people with disabilities organize themselves to examine their needs and aspiration. And it is also comforting to see that the public authorities are listening and giving political legitimacy to the demands of this category of our fellow citizens. Disability is not a delay or a burden. It is all above a social state, and we must recognize its true extent. As you know, situations are not homogeneous. There are those of us who are born with a disability. There are those of us who have disability through illness or accident. But there are also some of our fellow citizens for whom old age can be a handicap. These are all situations that deserve all specific and appropriate responses. Our society and I welcome first of all the courage to recognize disability for what it is and not to dilute it in politically correct wording. It is this political recognition that is strongly expressed by the establishment of a National Agency for People with Disabilities. Just 1 year ago, the mission involved in this institution is very ambitious, but at the same time it is a very noble and very fair mission. First of all, we must not lock people with disabilities into prejudice and stereotypes that come straight out of our ignorance, beliefs, and superstition. It is also about not lowering people with disabilities with a compassionate look, or rather a perception that will make them eternal assisted people who need to be cared for charitable reason. For this point of view, the awareness campaign carried out by the agency throughout the country can change the mentality and show that people living with disabilities are fully independent citizens, like other citizens with the same needs, concerns, and desire for development. For the mission of these agencies is not limited to the threshold of simple social awareness. Indeed, the ANPH must help the government to identify and implement specific policy that promote the social, professional, economic, and political integration of people with disabilities. This is a strong idea that has prevailed in the design of this institution to ensure that the fundamental rights of people living with disabilities are granted on an equal footing with the rights of all other citizens: the right to education, the right to work, the right to housing, the right to health, the name but a few. As you know, all this right when it comes to people with disabilities can remain purely theoretical if specific provision or even structure are not put in place to implement them. I'm delighted that the agency, supported by the field work of a network of 12 associations, has become in such a short time a privileged interlocutor of the government in this field. It is wrong to think that people living with a disability express specific needs to develop. It just has to be said that these people need specific slides to meet their ordinary needs similar to those of everyone else. The government is aware of this specificity. Must take this into account. It already takes into account in all public space behaviors, both in traffic lanes and in the meaning of access, both in care and in training. Many achievements testify to the progress made in the integration of people with disabilities in all these areas, but these advances, which are the result of a generalized awareness, are not yet enough for me. We still need to redouble our efforts, especially with regards to professional integration, because we have the courage to denounce together many of our fellow citizens made vulnerable by disability are now victims of occupational segregation that does not say its name. An intolerable segregation contrary to all value. This is why the government, in order to eliminate this illegality of facts, will strengthen the existing legal arsenal that both public and private companies give specific importance to the employment of public with disabilities. I begin my remarks by reminding you that disability is neither a delay nor a burden. It is just a situation of fragility that can affect everyone depending on the circumstance. A situation of fragility that can be transformed into a situation of precariousness and social exclusion. It is our duty to ensure that our fellow citizens made vulnerable by a disability are not excluded or made vulnerable.
Valeurs. C'est pourquoi le gouvernement, dans le souci de gommer cette inégalité des faits, renforcera l'arsenal juridique existant pour que les entreprises, aussi bien publiques que privées, accordent une importance spécifique à l'emploi des personnes vivant avec un handicap. J'ai commencé mes propos en rappelant que le handicap n'est ni une tare ni un fardeau. C'est juste une situation de fragilité qui peut concerner tout le monde en fonction des circonstances. Une situation de fragilité qui peut se transformer en une situation de précarité et d'exclusion sociale. Il est de notre devoir de faire en sorte que nos concitoyens fragilisés d'un handicap. J'ai commencé mes propos en rappelant que le handicap n'est ni une tare ni un...
On the other hand, the President of the Republic delivered a speech in the Somali language in which he stressed the role played by the National Agency for Special Needs, since it was established about a year ago in the service of people with disabilities. Here is the speech of the President.
First of all, I would like to pay tribute to the ANFP. Mr. Douali has the merit of having made enormous progress in 1 year for the well-being of people with special needs that we government and leaders have not been able to do so far about 30 years. This must be said that the community of all people with special needs are the same people who voted for this. It should be noted in patience for those people with varying degrees of disabilities come from a family united with fathers, mothers, brothers and sisters. Know that every person with special needs has the same rights as any other citizens, and it is an unexpected and unfortunately secret right. It is not an act of charity or our part. I would add that a person with a disability has a full right to have access to all public services, whatever they may be. We must hardly stigmatize, minimize, or reject them. Those behaviors go against our religion, namely Islam. Like we will never tolerate such unfounded actions. I would not say that in this world, whatever that fundamental rights of people with disability are fully respected. But in most countries, the time when people with disabilities were imprisoned in home or over a long is over and no longer appropriate. We must therefore rightfully respect them above all. We leaders from all walk our life. We will have to support them, help them, encourage them as far for their real life and family. They should not be ashamed to solicit, to demand their rights. The state of affairs is a duty on our part and emanating from all of us. We will also do everything in our power to fulfill this duty.
Following the series of speeches, the President of the Republic distributed medals and certificate of appreciation in favor of religious persons in the country of the effort of this segment.
martabadiyo ku marima sharafo naga mudan salaan gaara marka xiga marwada koobaad hooya martabadiyo ku marima sharafo naga mudan salaan gaara
waxaan kaaga maragnahay annana madal kastoo joogno dadku inuu midku yahay mas-uul daacada tahay dadku inuu midku yahay mas-uul daacada tahay mas-uul qaran allah ka dhigo maamulku dhiyay waxaan kaaga maragnahay annana madal kastoo joogno dadku inuu midku yahay mas-uul daacada tahay dadku inuu midku yahay mas-uul daacada tahay
macnihiyo ujeedada waa muhiim laxaadkuye miijahanku cararniyo maqalka iyo aragtida midna lagama maarme inta magac wadaage laxaaduu ka maqan yahay
It was at the People's Palace. Finance Minister Ilyas Musa Dawale with members of the government had a dialogue with the new World Bank Vice President Farid Belhaj. At the end of this meeting, many exchanges were held, particularly in areas that are a priority for the government, such as strengthening the human heritage, achieving and strengthening quality education and health for the population, job creation, the national objective of zero slums, and continuing effort to improve the business environment. This meeting also made it possible to assess the pace of implementation of main ongoing cooperation projects between the two parties. It should be recalled that Djibouti and the World Bank work closely together. The Vice President, who spoke during this meeting on connectivity that Djibouti must play not only on the national, regional and even international level, playing on its geostrategic position. In his speech, the Minister of Finance thanked the Vice President of the World Bank for the excellent relationship between Djibouti and the institution. Further, IDM highlighted the challenges of Djibouti that include human capital, resilience in climate, governance and ways and means to maximize the high potential of Djibouti. After the officials the minister present at this meeting took the floor of a brief presentation of their respective areas, Housing Minister Amina Abdi Aden first presented the government's flagship Zero Bidonville project. The minister stressed that the government of Djibouti had the ambition to eliminate the slums of its territory and to offer good living conditions to all inhabitants. And the Minister of Education, Dr. Nabil Mohammed, who has also mentioned the importance of digital and ICTs to create a youth Djibouti in perfect synergy with globalization. And finally, the Minister of Energy, Mr. Yonis Ali Gedi, has in these words told how Djibouti has taken the lead to turn the green energy in the coming years, the very core of the government strategy. And meanwhile, the Minister of Health pointed out major projects signed with the World Bank are aimed at improving the health service to citizens. The inauguration of a shelter for children was organized by Caritas in collaboration with IOM, the Minister of Women and Family, a building designed with funding from the European Union and the government of Djibouti. Children in the street are left to their own day. Very few have access to education. Our diagnosis of the population shows the need for them to work or beg to eat at night. During the day, the situation is the same for the children of the street, but once the nights come, they sleep outside, vulnerable victims of cold and hunger. The ceremony was chaired by the Minister of Women and Family, Mumina Ahmed Hassan, and saw the participation of Interior Minister Mohammed Ahmed Sheikh and the representative of AOM Djibouti, Mrs. Lalini Varasami, and the Director General of the Colonial Police, Abdullahi Abdi Farah. In an address to the representative of AOM and the European Union in Djibouti, pointed out at the occasion of the opening of this shelter for street children comes as a result of the work of many stakeholders in the affair of children. This initiative aims of caring for children with difficult circumstances in general and especially street children throughout a special system to combat this phenomenon. This construction of this shelter is part of the protection of the necessary care for migrants in Djibouti, as well as the shelter and the neediest migrant. They commend to the effort of the Minister of Women for the Family to collect real data for street children. As for the Minister of Women and Family, expressed the importance of caring for children with difficult circumstances in general and especially street children through a special system to combat this phenomenon. She thanked the IOM and the European Union for their support and constant assistance. A delegation led by the Minister of Social Affairs and Solidarity participated in the 70th conference of the Network of Pair in Multidimensional Poverty held this year in Seychelles for the June 30 to July 4, 2019. This high-level conference is organized by the Minister of Family Affairs of Seychelles and was placed under the high patronage of the President of the Republic of Seychelles, Mr. Danny Faure. The conference was attended by representatives from more than 40 countries worldwide and over 20 international organizations. The Republic of Djibouti was represented because the Minister of Social Affairs and Solidarity addressed the August Assembly by presenting the achievement and effort of the government in the social field. A fire broke out last night around 3:40 a.m. in the morning in a storage depot belonging to the Gubesh establishment. As soon as they were alerted, the fire brigade went to the scene of the incident and extinguished the fire. The speed of the fire soldiers' intervention proved effective. Indeed, they mastered the fire in time, which only ravaged plastic, water repackaging. No human loss to be deplored. According to initial police report, there are no victims but significant damage because the flames would have destroyed the depot of the water repacking store. Kubesh is located in the area of the Old Port, an area known to house most of the depot of Djiboutian department stores. For the time being, the cause of this fire is unknown. The perimeter was secured by the police, who immediately opened an investigation. Obituary. We have learned the death of the late Mohammed Duksi Farah, nicknamed Dagar, born in 1956 and died in Diradawa last night. The deceased left behind 2 widows, 7 boys and 6 girls. He is a grandfather of 19 grandchildren for a total of 32 children. Moving to the international news, Russia suspends the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. The INF Vladimir Putin on Wednesday passed a law allowing Russia to free itself from this treaty, concluded in 1987 during the Cold War, signed by former US and Russian presidents Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev. Its objective was to eliminate all cruise and ballistic missiles launched from the ground with a range of 500 to 5,500 kilometers. Last February, the United States also ceased to respect it, accusing Moscow of violating the treaty and taking the decision, which will take effect on August 2. The withdrawal from the INF Treaty. Russia had deployed SSCA-8 missiles, claiming that their range was only 480 kilometers, while NATO and the United States estimated it at 1,500 kilometers, accusing Moscow of having raped it with a new missile, the Novator 9M729. The latter, according to Russia, will have a range of 480 kilometers. NATO and the United States estimated at 1,500 kilometers. The suspension of this treaty raises fear of a new arms race between Moscow and Washington. This is all for this news. Thank you for watching and have a good night.